Terry Metcalf, and those of us who are gray-haired and long of tooth, we remember Terry Metcalf and the great thrills that you provided all of us. It's a great pleasure to have you here, sir, and I hope the trip from the Seattle area was a pretty good one for you.
Yeah, it was a good trip. A little tired last night, yesterday, but I'm good.
Good. Do you know what's going to happen today? Are you even acquainted with?
I'm getting inducted, I know that, with some other well-deserving people, and honored.
There will be a video of all of your heroics with the football Cardinals, the Big Red, and then, of course, you'll be telling us all about how you feel and so forth and what you're doing now. Okay. And we're going to ask you that in just a few minutes. My producer here, scoreboard guy, tried to get your old QB on because we do talk with Jim Hart every so often, but we're unable to make connection. Do you talk with him often?
No, I haven't talked to Jim in quite a while.
You had some awfully good years, though, in
because most of my teammates are on this side, and I'm way over on this side, so yeah.
Do you, when you think back to those days with the Big Red, can you correlate any of that, Terry, with the type of football that's played now in the NFL?
Well, I think we were a little bit ahead of the time, because we were an offense with Don Coryell that opened the game up, utilized all the skills that we had, or the skilled people that we had, and he liked to place the ball around, and we had a quarterback in Jim Hart that could place it in the right people's hands. And, they called the cardiac kid somewhere else, but I think we were the original cardiac cards.
You were.
And we did some great things here. Wish it could have been longer. But that's a subject for another time. But we did some real good things. We put some points on the board. We had people on the edge of their seats, and you didn't know the outcome until the very end, and that was a good thing.
We had one caller who wanted us. Or actually, I guess it was Twitter, wasn't it? Twitter question.
Twitter. Someone who was wanting us to ask you about if you had a most memorable game and if beating Dallas stood out above other opponents.
Yeah, Dallas. We'll talk about Dallas second. The most memorable game, I believe we were playing against the Giants for the East, and we were down 20. We were down 14-0 or something of that nature with 3 to 4 minutes left in the game. We scored 28 points and won. That was the most memorable because we came together as a team, and we battled the odds, and we came out victorious. About beating Dallas, that was always a pleasure. I only won one time in Dallas, and I had a T-shirt on underneath that they censored it because it had Cowboys Eat Birds, and it's always memorable to me.
At the Hall of Fame football luncheon, Terry Metcalf from the Big Red, the St. Louis Football Cardinals, way back in the 1970s. And I say that because it was a TV station back then covering the games. Terry, thank you very much for taking time to join us. Off air, we were talking about the fact that you did play much of your career, it wouldn't have been all of it, but much of your career on the artificial turf. How did you react to that when you played, and has it had any effect on you?
Well, the biggest difference was playing on it all year long, practicing on it every day. I noticed near the end of the year, my legs would be kind of worn out playing on that hard surface, so I had to do a little more strength exercising to prepare for that because you're playing on that hard surface and it takes a lot out of your legs. Especially if it got cold and you're playing on ice. They didn't have, the right shoes. Some teams put staples on the bottom of their shoes, which would be kind of dangerous if you got stepped on or something. But there really was no special shoe that would adapt to that AstroTurf in the cold. And then when it's in the summertime here in St. Louis, it'd be so hot you could actually see the heat waves rise up off the turf, and that made it'd be 95 in the air, but it'd be like 105 on that field, and that made it a little tough.
That's a rough way to go. Little?
Well, I just remember the diversity of that offense you guys had. You had Big Jim Otis. Mm-hmm. You had Mel Gray, who gave you the speed on the edges. Just being a part of that offense, and Jim Hart was always such Mr. Accuracy. And you mentioned earlier about how Coach Coryell was kind of ahead of his time. And do you see a lot of that offensive philosophy in today's football?
Somewhat. I still think there are some athletes that could be utilized somewhat like I was, but they tend not to because in fear of being injured. But you can get injured going up and down the stairs. If you're a football player, you're a football player and just play the game. I don't think in your mindset, if you think about injury, then you probably will get injured. I never thought about getting injured. I know it was a possibility, but I didn't try to think about that. I tried to just play the game the best of my ability. But Don Coryell was ahead of his time, and he utilized each individual to his best ability and put him in situations where he could be successful. And that's what he did with me most of the time. That's why I moved around a lot. That's why I did the things that I was capable of doing.
Well, and few running backs today return kicks. Is kick returning something you always really enjoyed doing?
I didn't like punts. I didn't like punt return. I didn't like waiting around for the ball and they're coming down to have a bead on me. I just didn't like that. I did it because we needed it done. We needed to get it done. It was for the team. But I prefer kickoffs. You get the ball fast, and I got to run and start, and I can see what's ahead of me.
When you were a practitioner of being the running back and the receiver, your offensive line was pretty doggone good. Talk a little bit about them and their effect.
Well, they started calling the Washington Redskins in the 80s the Hogs, but I had the original Hogs with Dan Dierdorf, Conrad Dobler, Tom Banks, Bob Young, and Roger Finney, Tom Berhaney backing them up. So I had the original Hogs, and they kept Jim Hart from being sacked on. Well, they had a record of 8 sacks that year, and actually one of those belonged to me because I missed the guy. But they were a well-organized, a well-oiled machine. They knew what they were doing. They were capable, and I trusted them. Jim trusted them. We all trusted them very well.
I want you to tell the folks a little bit about what Terry Metcalf is doing now.
Well, Terry Metcalf is still teaching kindergarten. I know that you can laugh, but I've been teaching since 1995. Retired for a little bit and went to high school as a security, substitute teacher, a football coach, track coach. Also, I'm an ordained minister and associate pastor, and still helping people. A lot of people helped me along the way to get where I've gotten, and I believe it's a good thing to return that favor.
That's very good philosophy to have, always helping others and being able to share in your expertise in life, because you certainly have more than your share of it. You've been through some high points
Yes.
and low points.
Yes.
How did you rally from the low points in life?
Well, I put it like this. I was my life at one time got lower than a footprint, and I couldn't do anything but look up. And when I looked up, I met the Lord Jesus Christ, 1990, December 29th, and I call that my second birthday. And it's the most important birthday because that's when my life started again and started having more purpose. I thought my whole life prior to that was football. And when football was kind of taken away because of injury, I was a lost individual, didn't know what to do. And I got lost in the wilderness for about 10 years. And then I got sick and tired and finally came to the realization that I needed help, and the only one that could help me was Jesus. And I've been looking up ever since and moving forward and doing what God has called me to do.
That says it all, folks. Says it all. Now, one quick question: do you still follow football on a regular basis?
Nah, I'm not a football fan. I never have been a football fan. I've been a participant my whole life. Now I'll keep watching who's winning, and I look at stats every now and then. But to sit down and watch a game, that's not good for me.
Do you have a favorite team that you root for anymore?
Not really. I just I look at the beginning who's the front runners, then I wait till like the middle of the year to see who's still there or who's falling off, and then I make my decision then. I think I've watched one Super Bowl since I retired from football in entirety. I just didn't have if I couldn't play in it, I didn't want it. I didn't want to watch it.
Don't blame you. Now, your old ball club, the Cardinals, are in Arizona now. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
They're a pretty good team.
I watched a little bit of it last night. Yeah, they got a pretty good team.
Do you have an individual in your era when you were playing both in college and in the pros, an individual who you particularly looked up to?
My idols were Jim Brown and Gale Sayers. I couldn't be as big as Jim, but I could somewhat. I wasn't quite as fast as Gale Sayers, because he was a 400-meter man. I couldn't run past 100. But I liked his elusiveness and his ability to run the ball, catch the ball, punt return, kick return, and so those are the things that I kind of fashioned my life after in the game of football.
It has gained you a Missouri Sports Hall of Fame induction, and that will occur in just a little while out here at the fairgrounds. And Terry, we greatly appreciate your being a part of our show, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Terry Metcalf visiting with us.